Now, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll for the Obi-Wan undercover story arc from the Clone Wars, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. And as usual, I'll also be showing off some of the artwork that's been sent in to me lately. But before we get to any of that, you can already nominate and or vote for which arc we do next by heading down and responding to my pinned comment with a suggestion of which arc you'd like to see next, or with a thumbs up if the one you'd like to see is already listed. And do note that this will be the last arc we do this for because it will round out our top 10 best Clone Wars arcs of all time. Though that said, I do know that some of you, maybe a lot of you, want this series to continue until we have ranked or rated most, if not all, of the Clone Wars arcs. So what I may end up doing, and comment below if you do or don't like this idea, is put up polls for more of the arcs, but not do full recap videos on them, or at least not for all of them individually. Perhaps after next week's video, I'll again ask you to nominate and or vote for story arcs, and we'll just take the top 5 of what's left, do some polls on them over the course of the next couple weeks, and then make a video covering all of them all at once, going over just a few comments for each of the polls. Whatever you think about that idea, good or bad, let me know in the comments below. Either way though, let's now get to the results for the Obi-Wan undercover arc, where we'll see that 51% of people, or just over half, thought it was an amazing arc and gave it 5 stars. Another 40% then thought it was good and gave it 4 stars. 8% of people then said about average and gave it 3, which left 1% to give it 2 stars, and a final 1% to give it just 1 star. And so when we do all the math here, the Obi-Wan undercover arc ends up with an average score of 4.39 stars, which puts it into 7th place overall, some ways behind the Maul Returns arc and just ahead of the Mortis arc, which was maybe a little surprising to me, because though, yes, I do enjoy this arc quite a bit, it's in my top 10, I didn't know just how much others enjoyed it, with many comments saying it's their favorite arc of all time, until doing this poll. Anyway, speaking of those comments, let's get to them, but not before once again saying thank you to everyone who votes, comments, watches, and sends in your artwork. It's all greatly appreciated. And now on to this week's top comment, which came to us from GameBoy18, who said, "Anyone can kill a Jedi with a lousy sniper blast. If you want my respect, do it face to face. Who said I wanted your respect?" This line, for me, helped sum up what to expect from the rest of the arc, and I loved it 5 stars. And he's of course speaking about a great exchange between Obi-Wan and Cad Bane during this arc, and them together is an odd couple if ever there was one, which is one of the things I really enjoy about this arc. I always enjoy stories or scenarios like this when a truly good character, like Obi-Wan obviously is, gets paired up or put in a situation where they have to maintain their cover and have to do some, shall we say, shady things that they normally would never ever do to maintain said cover. And you get to see how far they're willing to go to complete their objective. You get to see them sort of weigh if the end justifies the means. Basically, I love anytime you put a truly moral character into a situation where they have to act immoral to some degree, and test them to see just how far down that rabbit hole they're willing to go in order to accomplish some sort of greater good. And this arc did a fantastic job of testing Obi-Wan's character, and you're always interested to see how he'll handle certain situations, like when he has a guard at gunpoint but can't fire and kill them, and then Cad Bane kills him anyway, which of course casts suspicion on Obi-Wan. And going along with all this, we have a comment here from Brandon Lasanby, who said, "This was one of those arcs that actually had me on the edge of my seat, wondering if and when Obi-Wan's cover would be blown. The tension between him and Bane felt very natural, and it was cool to see how the bad guys and bounty hunters worked together. 5 stars. And yeah, despite obviously knowing Obi-Wan is not going to die even if his cover gets blown, there was still a lot of tension in this arc. It still worked really well and kept you on the edge of your seat. You still felt a sense of fear or dread for Obi-Wan in this crazy situation, and it was great to see how he dealt with Cad Bane. Again, they were like this odd couple, and how Bane dealt with him, and how maybe even some sort of mutual respect started to form between them. It was just a really great and interesting way to use both of these characters. Alright, and next up here we have this comment from Karat, who said, "I personally loved it because it introduced many different species and gave Cad Bane a sense of honor, which I think suits him very well." Also had this comment from Bryce Kowalski, who said, "The box is such an underrated part of the Clone Wars. Not only do we get to see more of the criminal underbelly of Star Wars, but we also get to see how arguably the best Jedi ever deals with that. And even though he thinks they're uncivilized, he's a pretty good shot with a blaster. And apologies in advance for the bad pun I'm about to make, but I do love how this arc and many arcs in the show, especially in the later seasons, were more outside the box, or something very different and unexpected from the show. I love how unique the show turned out to be overall, that it wasn't just one more or less generic story about the Clone Wars or the war itself after another. I love the range of characters it brought into the picture, that it actually explored the criminal underbelly in a way we hadn't really seen much before outside of some old EU books, and certainly hadn't seen in the movies where bounty hunters have a tendency to just kind of stand there and look cool a lot of the time. And the crazy thing about this show, and even though the war itself only spanned about 3 years in universe, is that it could have gone on indefinitely. They had so much to work with. Now, I'm not saying it should have gone on forever or that I didn't enjoy the ending we eventually got, but this show had so much going for it that it really could have just kept going and exploring different aspects of the universe, which, yes, did always still relate back to the war in some respect. To me, it's just amazing how much this show not only did for the prequel era of Star Wars, but all of Star Wars, really. Okay, and next up here then we have this comment from Lu Hidai, who said, I didn't really love this arc, but I didn't really hate it too. The only interesting thing that we see is Anakin's tease to the dark side and his rage, but that isn't exclusive to this arc, but it was awesome to see more Cad Bane and the box was cool. Also, we had this comment from Nessa who said, A+, this was one of my favorite arcs in all of Clone Wars. Seeing Anakin's grief and his anger coming to the surface to get revenge on the man who supposedly killed Obi-Wan was amazing, and the box test the bounty hunters had to go through was really good. Also had this one from T Jones 96 who said, I don't normally comment, but I had to for this one. This is one of my favorite arcs. It beautifully shows how close Anakin and Obi-Wan were, while showcasing snippets of Anakin's darker emotions. It shows just how much Anakin loved Obi-Wan, and honestly brings the tragedy between Obi-Wan and Anakin full circle. Easily 5 stars. Let's also then read this one here from Jessica A, who said, I thought Anakin's rage at Obi-Wan's death was handled perfectly, showcasing once more how his attachments were his deepest flaw. It's ironic how, in his attempt to avenge his friend, he was nearly the one to kill him. That may have been Palpatine's intention by telling him where to look, or at least to damage their friendship. This arc gave Anakin yet another reason not to trust the Jedi, and in this case it's hard to blame him. That aspect alone, earns it a solid 4 stars from me. Oh, and also the fact that Cad Bane killed someone over a hat. And I can't help but find it a little ironic, or maybe I should say fitting, that Anakin is so blinded by his rage and anger over what he thinks is Obi-Wan's death and getting vengeance for it, that he almost ends up killing Obi-Wan for real, or tries to, not that he obviously knew it was him. It's so very similar to how wanting to find a way to save Padme leads him to falling to the dark side, which actually leads to him essentially being responsible for her death. This arc is yet another great example of why attachments are so dangerous for a Jedi, and why they have to be mindful and in control of their feelings over letting themselves be ruled by them. Okay, and next up here then we have this comment from Mac Welch, who said, the only mistake the Jedi Council made was lying to Anakin, which is another reason why he became Darth Vader. Also, imagine if episode 3 started with these episodes instead of the Siege of Mandalore. Also here we have this comment from Joe Mahoney, who said, this is actually one of my favorite, if not my favorite arc. I love Anakin's reaction to Obi-Wan's death, and finding out Obi-Wan tricked him the entire time. How many other lies have I been told by the Council? Then we also have this one from I Am Iron Man, who said, it's great. It really shows us how he slowly gets more and more frustrated with the Council, which leads up to the events in Revenge of the Sith. And I do love how this arc adds more weight to Anakin's words in Revenge of the Sith, when he talks about how the Jedi are evil and how he should have known they were trying to take over. It helps explain why he truly feels that way or believes it, and that's because there is a history of distrust and lying between them, not just one single event that radically changes his mind about everything. This was a gradual process that came about because the Jedi didn't trust and doubted him, while the Sith, and I'm mainly talking about Palpatine, believed in him. Alright, and now let's get to just a few final comments before wrapping this up, starting with this one from Adam Rhodes 536, who said, I've always been a sucker for undercover stories like The Fast and the Furious or Sleeping Dogs. Plus, more seedy underbelly, criminal underworld stuff is always fun in Star Wars, and who can ever get enough of Cad Bane? Then we had this one from Anakin Skywalker himself, who said, "They lied to me. The Council lied to me. How many other lies have I been told by the Council?" Then we also had this one from Brennan Beecher, who said, "I understand no one is going to see this, but I hope Thor does. It's really important to note that the only person who is crying at Obi-Wan's funeral is Satine. In case you missed her, she's right next to Padme. I want the conversation between Satine and Obi-Wan about his funeral." And yeah, I'd love to see that one too. Next then, this comment from Cool Kid, who simply said, "Obi-Wan stabs a guy with a fork, instant 5 stars. Then this one from Just Delightful, who said, "It's good if you can get past the insane idea of Obi-Wan doing face-off." Also this one from Matthew Ledbetter, who quoted Cad Bane and said, "If you're gonna kill him, do it like a man." We also then had this one from Innerin Commander, who said, "Possibly my favorite Clone Wars arc ever. We get to see bounty hunters in action as we've always wanted. We get to see Anakin's reaction to Obi-Wan's death and hunt down the very person he's trying to avenge." While I'm not a fan of Cad Bane, I have to admit these are the best episodes with him in them. The idea of the box is so entertaining. A lethal bounty hunter game show, how cool is that? Added a lot of personality and insight into characters who were previously in the background. 5 of 5, absolutely amazing. My favorite quote from the episode, "You got a problem with Boba, you got a problem with me." Then this one from The Ahsoka, who said, "The box was probably one of the most fun episodes in the whole show. I loved it as a kid." And finally, this comment from the Halogen131, who said, "One of my favorite arcs. I loved how different it was. On one side, that was a wacky adventure with Obi-Wan having a little fun with this bad guy persona. On the other, we could see how Anakin was slipping into the dark side, how he lost his trust in the Jedi Council, and how far he was willing to go to avenge the death of someone he cared for. I liked how Palpatine at the end was clearly expecting Anakin to kill Dooku in a blind rage, after he again had planted inside Anakin more seeds of distrust in the Council. Also, the box was an amazing episode from start to finish, like a one giant cube reference." Well said, and again, I do enjoy this arc quite a bit. It's a perfect example of why the Clone Wars and the anthology style it went with was so good and popular with so many fans, which is because it wasn't afraid to get creative and explore the war and the characters in it or affected by it from all sorts of different sides and angles. Almost every story arc, again especially in the later seasons, had a slightly different feel to it, yet it still all tied together and felt cohesive. In a way, it almost reminds me of the MCU, how all these movies have a slightly different feel to them, yet there's still a strong commonality there that links and ties everything together. There's certainly a bigger picture to it all, which, yeah, will have a great payoff eventually, but it's the smaller individual stories that really keep you coming back for more. And in both cases, the MCU and Clone Wars, the uniqueness of every story is why you don't get sick of things and instead just keep watching, because it manages to keep walking that fine line between feeling fresh and new and yet old and familiar at the same time. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about the Obi-Wan Undercover arc, or what I or anyone else had to say about it here in this video, or you can of course nominate and or vote for which arc we will do next. Either way, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.